Captain Maya Chen pulled her worn combat boots tighter as she stepped onto the pristine deck of the Galactic Council's flagship. The polished metal floors reflected the sleek uniforms of alien officers, their perfect formations and gleaming equipment making her small human delegation look like scavengers who had wandered into a palace. The Zephyrians towered above everyone else, their crystalline skin catching the artificial light as they moved with fluid grace. Their leader, Admiral Kethavara, looked down at Maya with what she had learned to recognize as their version of amusement. The clicking sounds from his throat translated through her earpiece as barely concealed laughter. "So the humans have finally decided to join our war council," Kethavara announced to the assembled fleet commanders. "How delightfully primitive. Look at their representative. She cannot even afford proper military attire." Maya's weathered leather boots squeaked slightly against the polished floor, drawing more attention. The Velthari delegation, with their sleek bioarmor that shifted colors like oil on water, chittered among themselves. Even through the universal translator, their mockery was clear. Commander Thex of the Brutonian Empire, whose people looked like walking tanks made of living stone, rumbled with what passed for laughter among his kind. Humans still wear animal hide on their feet? We assumed they had progressed beyond such barbarism. Maya stood perfectly still, her hands clasped behind her back, watching the room full of advanced alien species treat her presence like an elaborate joke. She had expected this. Earth's military technology was centuries behind these galactic powers. Their ships were faster, their weapons more devastating, their armor more sophisticated. The war against the Devourers had been raging for 3 years across 17 star systems. These advanced civilizations had superior everything: quantum computers that could predict enemy movements, energy shields that could deflect planet-killing weapons, and warriors bred specifically for combat across multiple generations. And yet, Maya noticed something as she observed the holographic battle reports floating above the council table. For all their technological superiority, these mighty galactic powers were losing. Badly. The Devourers were a hive-mind species that consumed entire worlds, turning planets into barren rocks before moving to the next system. They adapted quickly, learning from each encounter. What worked once rarely worked twice against them. Perhaps the human can explain why we should waste resources protecting their insignificant planet, Admiral Kethavara continued, his crystalline features shifting to display what Maya assumed was smugness. Earth offers nothing to our alliance. No advanced technology, no superior weapons, no warriors worthy of mention. Maya finally spoke, her voice calm and steady, despite being the center of mockery. "You're right about our technology. Our ships are slower, our weapons weaker, our armor less protective." This admission brought fresh waves of alien laughter. A Velthari officer actually had to steady himself against a console, his bioarmor rippling with what looked like mirth. "But there's something you should know about these boots," Maya continued, lifting one foot slightly. "My grandfather wore them in the Pacific during World War II. My father wore them in Vietnam. I wore them in Afghanistan, then Syria, then the Martian colonies, and now here." The laughter began to die down as the aliens tried to process what she was saying. "They're not just boots. They're a reminder that humans have been fighting wars against impossible odds for thousands of years. We've faced enemies with better weapons, better armor, better everything, and we're still here." Admiral Kethavara's crystalline features shifted to what might have been confusion. "Your point, Primitive?" Maya walked closer to the holographic display showing the recent battle losses. Her boots clicked against the metal floor with each step, the sound somehow more pronounced in the suddenly quieter room. "My point is that you've been fighting this war like a chess match. Calculated moves, advanced strategies, superior technology. You're treating the Devourers like just another enemy to be defeated through conventional superiority." She stopped in front of the display, her reflection visible in the polished surface. "But humans learned something a long time ago. Sometimes the enemy isn't interested in playing by the rules. Sometimes you can't win by being better at the same game." The room had gone completely silent now. Even the soft humming of the ship's advanced systems seemed muted. The Devourers aren't just another army. They're a force of nature that adapts to whatever you throw at them. You keep fighting them the same way, just with bigger weapons and better shields. That's why you're losing. Commander Thex leaned forward, his stone-like features grinding together as he spoke. "And what would primitive humans do differently?" Maya smiled for the first time since entering the room. It wasn't a pleasant smile. We'd stop fighting fair. The alien commanders exchanged glances, their various forms of communication creating a low buzz throughout the room. Maya could see uncertainty replacing the earlier mockery in their postures and expressions. Tomorrow I'll show you battle footage from Earth's defense. Not our technology or our weapons, our methods. How a species with inferior everything managed to do something none of your advanced civilizations have accomplished yet. Which is? Admiral Kethavara asked, his voice having lost its earlier condescension. We made the Devourers retreat. Maya turned and walked toward the exit, her boots clicking against the floor with each step. Behind her, the council chamber erupted in urgent alien conversations as species that had considered humans beneath notice suddenly found themselves very interested in what the primitive girl in boots had to say. The council chamber filled with excited alien chatter as Maya's words sank in. Admiral Kethavara's crystalline form shifted through several color patterns. Something Maya had learned indicated deep thought among his people. Commander Thex's massive stone hands drummed against the table, creating small tremors that rippled through the metal surface. Impossible, whispered Sub-Commander Yila of the Velthari, her bioarmor flickering between shades of disbelief. Our intelligence reports showed Earth's defensive fleet was completely destroyed. How could humans have repelled the Devourers? Maya paused at the chamber entrance, not turning around. Your intelligence was correct. They did destroy our fleet, all of it. Every ship, every orbital platform, every piece of military hardware we had in space. The chamber went silent again. If the aliens had been confused before, now they were completely baffled. Then how? Admiral Kethavara demanded, his voice carrying harmonics that suggested he was speaking for the entire assembly. Maya finally turned back to face them, her expression serious. Because we didn't try to fight them in space. We let them come to us. She walked back to the holographic display, calling up Earth's defensive recordings with a gesture. The projection showed the blue-green planet surrounded by the twisted, organic ships of the Devourer fleet. The alien vessels looked like enormous insects crossed with sea creatures, their hulls pulsing with bioluminescent patterns. Every other world you've defended, you met them in space, ship-to-ship combat, trying to prevent them from reaching the surface. Sometimes you won those battles, but eventually they wore you down and landed anyway. The hologram showed the Devourer ships descending through Earth's atmosphere, their forms seeming to writhe as they approached the surface. Maya noticed several alien commanders leaning forward, studying the human response. But humans did something different. We evacuated our cities completely. Not just the people, everything. Every piece of technology, every resource, every scrap of metal. We left them empty shells. The projection showed vast urban centers standing eerily silent as the Devourer ships landed. The aliens watched as the invading forces emerged from their vessels. Creatures that looked like a nightmare fusion of insect and machine, with razor-sharp limbs and sensor clusters where faces should be. Your species always tried to protect your infrastructure, Maya continued. You fought to save your cities, your technology centers, your manufacturing plants. You gave the Devourers exactly what they wanted. Advanced civilizations to consume and learn from. Commander Thex's gravelly voice rumbled through the chamber. Without infrastructure, how did you mount any defense at all? Maya's smile returned, but this time there was something predatory about it. Who said anything about defense? The hologram shifted to show underground tunnel networks spreading beneath Earth's major cities like vast spider webs. The passages were rough, clearly excavated quickly, and lined with simple materials that registered as primitive to the alien sensors. While you were developing force fields and energy weapons, humans were perfecting something much older, something we learned in caves and trenches and underground bunkers across centuries of warfare. The recording showed small groups of humans emerging from hidden entrances, moving through abandoned city streets with practiced stealth. They carried simple kinetic weapons and explosive devices that looked crude compared to the advanced alien technology the other species favored. Guerrilla warfare, Maya said simply. Hit-and-run tactics, improvised weapons, using the enemy's strength against them. The aliens watched in fascination as human fighters attacked Devourer patrols, then vanished back into their tunnel networks before the enemy could respond. Each strike was small, seemingly insignificant, but the cumulative effect was clearly visible on the alien invaders. The Devourers are used to consuming advanced technology, Maya explained as the projection showed confused alien creatures standing among destroyed equipment that registered as primitive junk to their sensors. Their adaptation depends on analyzing sophisticated systems and incorporating them into their own biology. Admiral Kethavara's crystalline features were cycling through rapid color changes now. But primitive human weapons offer nothing to analyze. Exactly. They kept trying to adapt to technologies that were deliberately kept simple. A gunpowder explosive doesn't have quantum processors to reverse engineer. A steel knife doesn't have energy matrices to absorb. The hologram showed devourer forces becoming increasingly frustrated as they found nothing worth consuming in the empty cities. Their biomechanical forms began to show signs of confusion, with some units attacking their own equipment in apparent distress. But the real breakthrough came when we realized something about their hive mind, Maya said, manipulating the display to show brain scan readings from captured devourer specimens. They're not just connected to each other. They're dependent on that connection. Cut off individual units and they start to malfunction. The recording shifted to show human fighters using primitive radio jammers and electromagnetic pulse devices. Nothing sophisticated. Equipment that could be built in any basic workshop with materials scavenged from old electronics. We didn't try to outfight them technologically. We just cut their communications and picked them off in small groups. Ancient tactics, modern application. Sub-Commander Yila's bioarmor was now flickering rapidly between colors of excitement and disbelief. How long did you maintain this resistance? 6 months, Maya replied. 6 months of constant harassment, sabotage, and psychological warfare. We made Earth more trouble than it was worth. The projection showed the final phase, devourer ships beginning to lift off from Earth's surface. Their holds clearly not full of the resources they had expected to harvest. Some ships appeared damaged, others seemed to be fleeing in obvious distress. They left? Commander Thex asked, his voice carrying an undertone of awe. The devourers actually retreated? They left, Maya confirmed. Not because we defeated them in battle, but because we made the cost of staying higher than the value of what they could gain. We turned their greatest strength, their ability to adapt and consume advanced technology, into a weakness. The chamber erupted in alien discussions again, but this time the tone was completely different. Where before there had been mockery, now there was intense interest. Where there had been dismissal, now there was respect. Admiral Kethavara called for silence, his crystalline form now glowing with what Maya recognized as excitement. These tactics you speak of, could they be adapted for our fleets? Maya shook her head slowly. Admiral, you're still thinking like a conventional military force. These tactics can't just be added to your existing strategies like a new weapon system. She gestured toward her worn boots again. They require a completely different mindset. You have to be willing to look weak, to appear defeated, to let the enemy think they've won. Most advanced civilizations can't do that. Their pride won't allow it. But humans can? Asked Sub-Commander Yila. Maya's expression became thoughtful. Humans have a saying, pride comes before the fall. We learned a long time ago that sometimes you have to lose every battle to win the war. Sometimes the girl in old boots has to let everyone laugh at her until the moment she proves them all wrong. She walked toward the exit again, then paused. If you really want to beat the devourers, you'll have to learn to fight like humans. Not with better technology, but with better thinking. Not with superior weapons, but with superior cunning. As Maya left the chamber, the alien commanders began the most intense strategic discussion in the Council's history, trying to understand how a primitive species and outdated equipment had accomplished what their combined advanced civilizations could not. 3 days later, Maya found herself standing in the Council's war room surrounded by the most advanced military minds in the galaxy. The massive holographic display showed the current battlefront, the Kepler system, where the devourers had been systematically consuming planets for the past 8 months. Admiral Kethavara's crystalline form had been shifting through anxious color patterns since the meeting began. Captain Chen, we have studied your Earth recordings extensively. Our military analysts are perplexed. Commander Thex's massive stone fingers drummed impatiently on the conference table. The tactics you describe go against every principle of modern warfare. How can deliberately appearing weak lead to victory? Maya studied the holographic battlefield, noting the positions of both Devourer and Galactic Council forces. The alien fleets were arranged in perfect formations. Beautiful, precise, and completely predictable. That's exactly the problem, she said, pointing to the orderly alien ship formations. Look at your deployment. Every vessel in optimal position, every weapon system calibrated for maximum efficiency, every shield frequency coordinated for mutual support. Sub-Commander Yila's bio-armor flickered with confusion. Those formations represent thousands of years of military evolution. They maximize our technological advantages. And they tell the Devourers exactly what to expect, Maya replied. Your formations are so perfect that their adaptive algorithms can predict your next 3 moves before you make them. She manipulated the holographic controls, overlaying Earth's defensive patterns onto the display. Instead of neat formations, the human ships had been scattered seemingly at random, with no apparent coordination or strategy. This looks like chaos, Admiral Kethavara observed, his harmonics carrying notes of disapproval. Exactly what we wanted it to look like, Maya said. But watch the actual movement patterns. The hologram began playing through the battle sequences. What had initially appeared as random movement slowly revealed itself as something else entirely. Human ships were using unpredictable attack vectors, striking from unexpected angles, and retreating through paths that seemed to make no tactical sense. There is a pattern, Commander Thek said slowly, his stone features grinding together in thought. But it follows no military doctrine we recognize. Because it's not military doctrine, Maya explained. It's based on human hunting patterns from before we even developed agriculture. Small groups, hit-and-run tactics using terrain to your advantage, making the prey expend more energy than the hunt is worth. She zoomed in on a specific engagement where a small group of human ships had lured a much larger devourer force into an asteroid field. Instead of fighting, the human vessels had simply vanished among the rocks, leaving the aliens to waste hours searching empty space. But surely this only works on a small scale, Sub-Commander Yila protested. How can hunting tactics be applied to fleet-level combat? Maya smiled and expanded the view to show the entire Kepler system. The same way wolves hunt buffalo. You don't try to kill the whole herd at once. You pick off the weak ones, harass the strong ones, and gradually wear down their ability to function as a group. The display showed how human forces had been systematically targeting devourer supply lines, communication relays, and isolated scout groups. None of the attacks were particularly damaging individually, but together they had created a growing sense of chaos in the enemy ranks. The devourers depend on their hive mind for coordination, Maya continued. Disrupt that coordination, and their superior numbers become a liability instead of an advantage. Admiral Kethavara's crystalline body began cycling through what Maya had learned were excitement patterns. But our previous attempts to jam their communications have failed. Their bio-neural networks adapt too quickly to our interference. Because you're trying to out-tech them again, Maya said patiently. You're using sophisticated jamming systems that they can analyze and counter. Humans used something much simpler. She brought up recordings from Earth's defense showing crude radio transmitters broadcasting random noise across multiple frequencies. The equipment looked like it had been built in someone's garage with exposed wiring and mismatched components. Static, Commander Thex asked incredulously. You used simple radio static? Not just static. Specific patterns designed to trigger confusion in their neural networks. We studied captured devourer specimens and found that certain frequencies cause their bio-neural systems to malfunction. Not sophisticated frequencies that require advanced equipment, just specific patterns of noise that any basic transmitter can produce. The aliens stared at the primitive equipment in amazement. Sub-Commander Yila's bio-armor was cycling through rapid color changes. How did you discover this when our most advanced research teams missed it? Maya's expression became thoughtful. Because your researchers were looking for complex solutions. They assumed that an advanced species would require advanced countermeasures. But humans have always been good at finding simple solutions to complex problems. She manipulated the display to show brain scans from various Earth animals. We noticed that the devourer neural patterns resembled certain Earth creatures, specifically hive insects like bees and ants. So we tested the same frequencies that disrupt insect navigation systems. And it worked? Admiral Kethavara asked, his harmonics carrying notes of amazement. Better than we expected. The devourer's bio-neural networks are so sophisticated that they're actually vulnerable to simple disruption. It's like using a stone to break a quantum computer. The sophistication works against them. Commander Thex leaned forward, his massive form creating small tremors in the deck. These frequencies, can they be replicated by our equipment? Any basic radio transmitter can produce them, Maya confirmed. The challenge isn't the technology, it's the mindset. You have to be willing to use primitive tools alongside your advanced systems. She gestured toward her worn boots again, just like these. They're not better than your sophisticated equipment, but they serve a purpose that high-tech alternatives can't match. Sometimes the old ways work precisely because they're old. Sub-Commander Yila's bio-armor had settled into a pattern that Maya recognized as intense concentration. Captain Chen, if we were to implement these tactics, how would you suggest we begin? Maya studied the holographic battlefield again, noting the positions of the various fleets. First, you'd have to do something that goes against every instinct you have as advanced military forces. Which is? Admiral Kethavara asked. You'd have to make your fleets look weaker than they actually are. Scattered formations, apparent communication problems, visible equipment failures. You'd have to convince the Devourers that you're a broken, desperate enemy that's no longer worth their full attention. The chamber went silent as the alien commanders contemplated this suggestion. Maya could see the internal struggle playing out across their various alien features. The conflict between military pride and tactical necessity. And once they underestimate us? Commander Thex asked finally. Maya's smile became predatory again. Then we show them what happens when humans stop fighting fair. When we stop trying to match their technology and start using their assumptions against them. She began manipulating the holographic controls, sketching out a battle plan that looked nothing like conventional galactic warfare. But I should warn you, if we do this, there's no going back. Once you start fighting like humans, the rest of the galaxy might never look at you the same way again. Admiral Kethavara's crystalline form glowed brighter. Captain Chen, if it saves our civilizations from the Devourers, we are willing to learn what it means to fight in old boots. Maya nodded slowly, already beginning to plan how to turn the most advanced military forces in the galaxy into something the Devourers had never encountered before. An enemy that fought dirty, thought creatively, and refused to play by the rules that had governed galactic warfare for millennia. 2 weeks later, the transformation of the Galactic Council's forces was so complete that Maya barely recognized them. The pristine formations had been replaced by scattered, seemingly random deployments. Ship hulls that had once gleamed with perfect maintenance now showed carefully crafted damage patterns. Communication arrays transmitted static and false distress signals alongside legitimate tactical data. Maya stood on the bridge of the flagship, watching Admiral Kethavara struggle with equipment that had been deliberately downgraded to appear primitive. His crystalline fingers fumbled with manual controls that had replaced the sophisticated neural interfaces he was accustomed to. This feels like self-sabotage, the Admiral muttered, his color patterns shifting between frustration and uncertainty. My officers report feeling vulnerable, exposed. Their morale is suffering. Good, Maya replied, checking the tactical display. If your own people think you're weak and disorganized, then the Devourers will believe it too. The key to any deception is making it believable to everyone, including yourself. Commander Thex's voice rumbled through the communication system from his position with the Brutonian fleet. Captain Chen, my warriors are questioning my sanity. Brutonian military tradition spans 10,000 years. We do not retreat. We do not hide. We do not pretend to be weak. Maya smiled, remembering similar complaints from human military commanders when she had first proposed these tactics on Earth. Commander, what's more important? Maintaining tradition or surviving to create new ones? Sub-Commander Yila's bio-armor was transmitting from her ship in anxious flickers. The Velthari fleet is in position, but our pilots are struggling with the irregular flight patterns. Our training emphasizes precision and coordination. This chaos goes against everything we know. Perfect, Maya said, watching as the Devourer scout ships began appearing at the edge of the system. Remember, the goal isn't to fight them directly. It's to make them think you're not worth fighting. The enemy scouts were exactly as Maya had expected, biomechanical vessels that pulsed with alien intelligence, their sensors sweeping across the seemingly disorganized Galactic Council forces. She could almost sense their confusion as they tried to analyze the chaotic deployment patterns. All ships begin the performance, Maya announced over the fleet-wide channel. Remember, you're a broken alliance falling apart under pressure. Act like it. What followed was the strangest military operation in galactic history. Ships began transmitting panicked distress calls. Commanders publicly argued with each other over open channels. Entire squadrons appeared to break formation and retreat in disorder. Admiral Kethavara was particularly convincing as he loudly berated his officers for equipment failures that were entirely fictional. This outdated human technology is useless. How are we supposed to coordinate with these primitive communication systems? Maya had coached him well. The complaints were technically accurate. The human-designed backup systems were indeed primitive, compared to Zephyrian technology, but the Admiral was selling the deception perfectly. The Devourer scouts lingered longer than usual, their sensors working overtime to analyze what appeared to be a complete military breakdown. Maya watched their movement patterns on the tactical display, noting how they moved closer to get better readings on the apparently failing Galactic Council fleet. Phase 2, Maya announced quietly. Begin the retreat. The performance became even more elaborate as ships began falling back in apparent panic. The retreat looked real because in many ways, it was. The alien crews were genuinely uncomfortable with the unconventional tactics, and their unease translated into believable desperation. Commander Thex's Brutonian ships were the most convincing, their warriors' natural aggression making their feigned panic seem especially dramatic. We cannot hold position. These humans have infected us with their cowardice. Every ship for itself. Maya bit back a laugh. The commander was really getting into his role, even though she knew how much it cost his pride to appear weak. The Devourer scouts were now transmitting data back to their main fleet, and Maya could see on long-range sensors that the enemy was responding exactly as predicted. Instead of deploying their full force, they were sending only a moderate-sized battle group, enough to finish off what appeared to be a broken and retreating enemy. All ships, fall back to the asteroid belt, Maya ordered. Make it look panicked, but stay within the planned parameters. The retreat through the asteroid field was a masterpiece of controlled chaos. Ships weaved between the massive rocks in apparent terror, occasionally broadcasting false collision warnings and equipment failures. To external observers, it looked like a complete rout, but Maya knew better. Every ship was exactly where it needed to be. Hidden weapon systems were charged and ready, and the primitive radio transmitters were positioned throughout the asteroid field, ready to broadcast the specific frequencies that would disrupt Devourer neural networks. Devourer main force entering the system, reported Sub-Commander Yila, her bioarmor now flickering with genuine excitement despite her earlier concerns. They're moving in pursuit formation, minimal defensive posture. Maya nodded, watching as the enemy fleet advanced confidently into the system. The Devourers were clearly expecting easy prey, a broken alliance that would provide minimal resistance and maximum resources for consumption. Admiral, how's your acting? Maya asked quietly. Kethavara's crystalline form shifted to what she now recognized as grim amusement. I am discovering that deception comes more naturally than I expected. Perhaps there is something to be said for human tactics after all. The Devourer fleet was now spread out in pursuit formation, their ships scattered across a wide area as they chased what appeared to be fleeing Council forces. It was exactly the position Maya had hoped for, overconfident, disorganized, and vulnerable. All ships prepare for Phase 3, Maya announced. Remember, once we start this, there's no going back to conventional warfare. After today, the Devourers will know that the galaxy has learned to fight dirty. She watched the tactical display as the enemy fleet moved deeper into the asteroid field, following what they believed were the scattered remnants of a defeated alliance. The Devourers had taken the bait completely, expecting an easy victory against a broken enemy. Captain Chen, Admiral Kethavara said quietly, his voice carrying harmonics of nervous anticipation. I find myself curious about something. What's that, Admiral? When you first walked into our council chamber in those worn boots, were you already planning this moment? Maya smiled, her hand unconsciously moving to touch the radio transmitter controls. Admiral, humans have a saying, never let them see you coming. From the moment I walked into that room and let you all laugh at the girl in boots, I was already 3 steps ahead. The Devourer fleet was now completely committed to the pursuit. Their formation spread thin, and their attention focused on what they believed was an easy conquest. Maya's fingers hovered over the transmitter controls, ready to begin the next phase of the most unconventional battle in galactic history. All ships on, she announced. It's time to show them what happens when humans stop playing fair. Maya's finger pressed the transmitter control, and suddenly the asteroid field came alive with invisible warfare. Dozens of primitive radio transmitters hidden among the rocks during the previous weeks began broadcasting the specific frequencies that human researchers had discovered could disrupt Devourer neural networks. The effect was immediate and devastating. The pursuing Devourer ships suddenly began erratic movements, their biomechanical forms writhing as if in pain. The perfect coordination that had made them so feared across the galaxy collapsed into chaos as individual vessels lost contact with the hive mind that guided them. Now, Maya shouted into the fleet communication system. What happened next shattered every concept of honorable, galactic warfare that had existed for thousands of years. Admiral Kethavara's Zephyrian ships emerged from behind asteroids where they had been hiding, their weapons targeting confused Devourer vessels that were now flying blind. But instead of engaging in the traditional ship-to-ship combat that the enemy expected, they used human-designed tactics, hit-and-run strikes attacking from multiple angles, then vanishing back into the asteroid field before the Devourers could respond. This is incredible. Kethavara's voice crackled with excitement over the communication channel. They cannot adapt to our attacks because they cannot predict them. Commander Thex's Brutonian warriors had embraced the unconventional tactics with surprising enthusiasm. Instead of their traditional frontal assault, they were using the asteroids as cover, emerging to deliver devastating attacks before disappearing again. The massive stone-like beings had discovered that guerrilla warfare suited their natural cunning far better than formal military formations. My warriors are calling this hunting among the rocks, Thex reported, his gravelly voice carrying notes of fierce joy. They say it reminds them of our ancestral hunting traditions before we became civilized. Sub-Commander Yila's Veltari ships were perhaps the most transformed. Their bioarmor, which had always been purely defensive, was now being used as active camouflage. The ships changed colors and patterns to blend with the asteroids, making them nearly invisible to Devourer sensors that were already compromised by the radio interference. Our ships are like ghosts in the void, Yila reported, her bioarmor flickering with what Maya now recognized as combat excitement. The enemy cannot track us, cannot predict us, cannot counter us. Maya watched the tactical display with satisfaction as the Devourer fleet, which had entered the system expecting easy prey, found itself trapped in a nightmare of unconventional warfare. Their advanced adaptive algorithms, designed to counter sophisticated military tactics, were useless against the primitive but effective human strategies. But the real surprise came when the alien commanders began improvising on their own. Admiral Kethavara's ship started using their sophisticated shield generators not for defense, but to create false sensor readings that made them appear to be asteroids. Commander Thex discovered that his ship's mining equipment could be used to collapse asteroids onto enemy vessels, creating avalanches of rock and metal that no amount of adaptive armor could defend against. Most impressive of all, Sub-Commander Yila began coordinating her fleet's movements using ancient Velthari hunting signals, a form of communication so primitive that the Devourer's advanced interception systems didn't even recognize it as military coordination. Captain Chen, Admiral Kethavara called over the communication system. I believe I'm beginning to understand why humans have survived so long despite technological disadvantages. Maya smiled, watching as another group of Devourer ships fell victim to an ambush that would have been impossible under conventional galactic warfare. And what's that, Admiral? You think like predators, not like civilized beings. You see warfare not as a contest of technological superiority, but as a hunt where the cleverest predator wins. The battle was unlike anything in recorded galactic history. Instead of massive fleet engagements with coordinated volleys and defensive formations, it had become a deadly game of hide-and-seek among the asteroids. The Devourers, stripped of their hive mind coordination by the radio interference, were being picked apart by an enemy that refused to fight fair. Phase 4, Maya announced. Begin the herding operation. This was perhaps the most audacious part of the plan. Instead of trying to destroy the entire Devourer fleet, the Galactic Council forces began deliberately driving the confused enemy ships toward a specific cluster of asteroids that Maya had identified during the planning phase. Commander, Thex's warriors used controlled detonations to block escape routes. Admiral Kethavara's ships created false sensor readings that made certain paths appear safe while hiding the real dangers. Sub-Commander Yila's forces used their camouflage abilities to appear suddenly and drive enemy ships in specific directions. The Devourers, operating without their usual coordination, responded to each threat individually, never realizing that they were being manipulated into an increasingly tight cluster of asteroids where the radio interference was strongest and escape routes were most limited. Like herding cattle, Maya murmured, remembering her grandfather's stories about ranch work. Make them think they're choosing their own path while you guide them exactly where you want them to go. The trapped Devourer ships began to show signs of genuine panic as they realized their situation. Their biomechanical forms writhed and pulsed with distress signals, but the radio interference prevented them from coordinating any effective response. Captain Chen, Sub-Commander Yila's voice carried a note of concern. Some of the enemy ships are attempting to escape by retreating toward the system's edge. Should we pursue? Let them go, Maya replied, surprising the alien commanders. Remember, the goal isn't to destroy every enemy ship. It's to make the cost of fighting us higher than the value of conquering us. Admiral Kethavara's harmonics carried confusion. But surely we should press our advantage while we have it. Maya shook her head, watching as roughly a third of the Devourer fleet managed to break free from the trap and begin fleeing the system. Those ships will return to their main fleet and report what happened here. They'll tell the other Devourers that this alliance doesn't fight like any enemy they've encountered before. And that helps us how? Commander Thex asked. Because uncertainty is a weapon, Maya explained. The Devourers have spent years adapting to conventional galactic military tactics. Now they'll have to consider the possibility that every future engagement might involve tactics they've never seen before. That uncertainty will make them more cautious, more hesitant to commit their forces. The remaining trapped Devourer ships were now completely helpless, their systems failing one by one as the sustained radio interference overwhelmed their bio-neural networks. Maya watched their life signs fade with a mixture of satisfaction and regret. Victory in warfare was never entirely pleasant, even when it was necessary. All ships, begin salvage operations, Maya ordered. But remember, we take only what we need for intelligence purposes. We're not conquerors. We're survivors teaching other survivors how to stay alive. As the Galactic Council forces began securing the battlefield, Maya reflected on how much had changed since she first walked into that council chamber. The aliens who had laughed at her boots now looked at her with something approaching reverence. And more importantly, they had learned to fight with human cunning instead of relying solely on technological superiority. But Maya knew this was only the beginning. Word of this victory would spread throughout the galaxy, and the Devourers would adapt their strategies accordingly. The next battle would require new tactics, new deceptions, and new ways of thinking about warfare. She looked down at her worn combat boots, thinking about her grandfather's stories of desperate battles against overwhelming odds. He would have been proud to see how his lessons about never giving up, never fighting fair, and never letting the enemy see you coming had been applied on a galactic scale. The girl in boots had led the charge, and the galaxy would never be the same. 6 months after the asteroid field victory, Maya stood before the largest gathering of galactic military leaders in recorded history. Representatives from 47 different species filled the massive amphitheater, their various forms creating a living tapestry of alien diversity. But the mood was far different from her first council meeting, where once there had been mockery and dismissal, now there was intense respect and urgent attention. Her worn combat boots no longer drew laughter. They had become a symbol that even the most advanced civilizations could learn from primitive wisdom. The Devourers have adapted, Maya announced, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics, as we expected they would. The holographic display showed recent battle reports from across 3 star systems. The Devourer forces had clearly learned from their defeat at the asteroid field, deploying new countermeasures and adaptive strategies that neutralized many of the tactics that had been so effective before. Admiral Kethavara's crystalline form shifted through worried color patterns. They've developed immunity to our radio interference frequencies. Their bio-neural networks now filter out the static patterns that previously disrupted their coordination. Commander Thex's massive stone fingers drummed against the table in frustration. My warriors report that the enemy no longer falls for our ambush tactics. They've learned to expect unconventional attacks and have developed new response protocols. Sub-Commander Yila's bio-armor flickered with concern. Our camouflage techniques are less effective. The Devourers have enhanced their sensor arrays to detect the electromagnetic patterns our ships produce, even when visually hidden. Maya nodded, having expected exactly this response. This is what happens when you fight an adaptive enemy. Any tactic that works once will eventually be countered. The question is, what do we do now? A new voice spoke from the assembly. General Vexarl of the Hegemony Coalition, a species that looked like living crystals arranged in geometric patterns. Surely we return to conventional warfare now that our deception tactics have been compromised. No, Maya said firmly. That's exactly what they're expecting us to do. They've adapted to our specific tactics, but they haven't adapted to our mindset. She manipulated the holographic controls, bringing up new battle plans that looked even more unconventional than the previous ones. The beauty of human warfare isn't any single tactic. It's the ability to constantly evolve, to never fight the same way twice. The display showed a dizzying array of new strategies. Ships disguised as space debris, communication networks that used quantum entanglement in ways that violated standard protocols, battle formations that deliberately appeared to be civilian refugee convoys. This is madness, whispered Commander Varthek of the Spiral Empire, whose people resembled metallic serpents. These tactics have no precedent in military science. Exactly, Maya replied. Military science assumes that both sides will follow certain rules, certain expectations about how warfare should be conducted. Humans learned long ago that the side willing to break those rules usually wins. She zoomed in on one particular plan that made several alien commanders visibly recoil. For example, this strategy involves deliberately allowing our ships to be captured. Admiral Kethavara's harmonics carried notes of horror. Allowing capture? That violates every principle of military honor. Does it? Maya asked. What if those captured ships contain surprises that the Devourers aren't expecting? What if surrender is just another weapon in disguise? The chamber erupted in agitated alien discussions. Maya could see the fundamental conflict playing out across dozens of different species. The struggle between military tradition and survival necessity. Sub-Commander Yila was the first to understand. You're suggesting we use their adaptive abilities against them, let them capture our ships, study our technology, adapt to our capabilities, and then surprise them with something completely different. Trojan horse tactics, Maya confirmed. One of humanity's oldest military strategies. Let the enemy think they've won while you prepare the real attack. She brought up recordings from Earth's historical databases, showing ancient human conflicts where apparent defeat had been turned into devastating victory through deception and misdirection. But this requires a level of sacrifice that most civilized species find. Uncomfortable, Maya continued. Ships will be lost. Crews will be captured. Some won't make it back. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. These were species accustomed to clean, technological warfare where losses were minimized and honor was maintained. Maya was asking them to embrace something much messier and more morally ambiguous. Commander Thex's gravelly voice broke the silence. How many ships? For the plan to work? We'd need to sacrifice roughly 30% of our fleet, Maya replied honestly. The Devourers have to believe they're winning decisively, or they won't lower their guard enough for the real attack to succeed. General Vexarl's crystalline structure rang with disbelief. 30%? That's deliberately accepting defeat. No, Maya corrected. That's investing in victory. The ships we sacrifice will carry concealed weapon systems that the Devourers won't detect until it's too late. When they try to integrate our captured technology into their own systems, they'll discover that humans have learned to weaponize surrender. She manipulated the display to show the technical details. Hidden in seemingly standard ship components were adaptive viruses designed to spread through bioneural networks, quantum resonance devices that could destabilize Devourer ship hulls, and communication systems that would allow the captured ships to coordinate surprise attacks from within enemy formations. This is brilliant, Sub-Commander Yila said slowly, her bioarmor beginning to flicker with excitement. We're not just using deception, we're using their own adaptation process as a delivery system for our weapons, Admiral. Kethavara was cycling through, Rapid color changes as he processed the implications. But the crews of those sacrificed ships, they would need to maintain the deception even under interrogation, possibly until death. Maya's expression became solemn. That's the hardest part of fighting like humans. Sometimes victory requires people to make sacrifices that look like failures. Sometimes heroes have to die looking like cowards. The chamber remained quiet as the alien commanders contemplated this harsh reality. Maya could see the internal struggle in their postures and expressions. Species that prized honor and technological superiority being asked to embrace tactics that appeared to abandon both. There's something else, Maya continued. This plan only works if every species commits completely. If any of you hold back ships or try to minimize your losses, the Devourers will see through the deception. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes, or optical sensors, of dozens of different species. I'm asking you to trust not just in human tactics, but in human thinking. To believe that sometimes the best way to win is to first accept losing. Commander Varthek's serpentine form coiled nervously. And if this plan fails, we will have deliberately weakened our fleets for nothing. Maya nodded grimly. If it fails, we'll have handed the Devourers a decisive victory and probably lost the war. But if we keep fighting conventionally, we'll lose anyway, just more slowly and with less hope. The chamber erupted in intense discussions as species that had never imagined such tactics debated whether they could embrace strategies that went against millennia of military tradition. Admiral Kethevara finally called for silence. Captain Chen, you are asking us to become something we have never been? To fight in ways that our ancestors would find dishonorable? Maya smiled sadly, thinking of her grandfather's stories about desperate times requiring desperate measures. Admiral, honor is a luxury that living species can afford. Dead ones can't. The question you have to ask is, what's more important, maintaining your military traditions or surviving to create new ones? The vote, when it finally came, was closer than Maya had hoped, but decisive enough to proceed. 43 species voted to implement the human strategy, while 4 chose to withdraw from the coalition, rather than participate in tactics they considered beneath their dignity. As the assembly dispersed to prepare for what might be the most unconventional military operation in galactic history, Maya remained behind, staring at her worn boots and thinking about the weight of leadership. She had convinced some of the galaxy's most advanced civilizations to embrace strategies that could either save them or destroy them. Either way, after the next battle, the galaxy would never again underestimate the girl in boots who had taught them that sometimes the most powerful weapon was the willingness to appear weak. 1 year later, Maya stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed Galactic Defense Station, watching as the last Devourer ships retreated beyond the edge of known space. The battle for the Centauri system had ended, not with explosions and destruction, but with the strange sight of an entire alien hive mind apparently experiencing something resembling fear. Admiral Kethvara approached. His crystalline form now permanently shifted to colors that Maya had learned indicated deep respect. Captain Chen, the final reports are in. The Devourers are not just retreating. They're actively avoiding any system where our forces are known to be present. Maya nodded, watching the alien ships disappear into hyperspace. The sacrificial gambit had worked beyond her wildest expectations. When the Devourers had captured and attempted to integrate the surrendered Galactic Council ships, they had inadvertently infected their entire bioneural network with adaptive viruses that turned their greatest strength into a devastating weakness. How many systems have they abandoned? Maya asked. 17 in the past month, Admiral Kethvara replied, including 3 that they had already begun consuming. They're treating our forces like a plague to be avoided rather than an enemy to be conquered. Commander Thex's voice rumbled through the communication system from his flagship. My warriors still struggled to understand how apparent defeat became our greatest victory. The ships we sacrificed dealt more damage than our entire conventional fleet had managed in 3 years of warfare. Sub-Commander Yila's image appeared on the observation deck's holographic display, her bio-armor flickering with what Maya now recognized as amused satisfaction. The psychological impact may be even more significant than the tactical one. For the first time in their species' history, the Devourers have encountered an enemy that they cannot predict or adapt to effectively. Maya smiled, remembering the moment when the hidden weapons had activated throughout the Devourer fleet. The enemy's adaptive algorithms, designed to quickly integrate captured technology, had instead spread the human-designed viruses through their entire bio-neural network faster than any conventional attack could have managed. There's more, Admiral Kethvara continued. Intelligence reports suggest that the Devourers are now expending significant resources, trying to understand human psychology and warfare patterns. They're studying every human conflict in recorded history, attempting to predict what we might do next. Good, Maya said. That means they're thinking defensively instead of offensively. They're wasting time trying to understand us instead of focusing on conquering new territories. The transformation of the Galactic Council had been as remarkable as the victory itself. Species that had once prized technological superiority and honorable combat now routinely employed deception, misdirection, and unconventional tactics. The rigid military hierarchies had given way to more flexible command structures that encouraged innovation and creative thinking. Captain Chen, Subcommander Yila said, "There's something the Council wanted me to discuss with you. Now that the immediate Devourer threat has been neutralized, some species are suggesting we return to more traditional military practices." Maya turned from the viewport, not surprised by this development. Let me guess. They're uncomfortable with how effectively they've learned to fight dirty. Admiral Kethvara's color patterns shifted to what she recognized as embarrassment. Many of our people struggle with the moral implications of deception-based warfare. They argue that victory achieved through such methods is somehow tainted. And what do you think, Admiral? Maya asked. The crystalline being was quiet for a long moment, his form cycling through complex color patterns that indicated deep thought. I think that my people are alive today because we learned to abandon our preconceptions about honorable warfare, but I also understand their discomfort. Maya walked to the center of the observation deck, looking out at the assembled fleet that represented the largest military alliance in galactic history. Ships from dozens of different species floated in formations that would have been impossible before human tactics taught them the value of unpredictability. There's something I need to tell you all, Maya said, activating the fleet-wide communication system. Something about human warfare that I haven't mentioned before. Across the fleet, alien commanders leaned forward to listen to the human who had changed the course of galactic history. You think that humans fight dirty because we enjoy deception or because we're naturally dishonest. But that's not true. We fight unconventionally because we have to. Throughout our history, humans have almost always been the underdog, weaker, slower, less specialized than our enemies. She gestured toward her worn combat boots. These boots have walked through mud, sand, snow, and alien soil across centuries of human conflict. They've carried soldiers who were outgunned, outnumbered and outmatched by enemies, with every possible advantage. The fleet communication channels were silent as thousands of alien military personnel listened to the small human in worn boots explain the philosophy that had saved their civilizations. Humans learned to fight, creatively not because we wanted to, but because conventional tactics meant death. Every trick, every deception, every dishonorable tactic we've taught you was developed by people who were fighting for their lives against impossible odds. Admiral Kethvara's harmonics carried notes of understanding. So when you taught us to fight like humans, you were teaching us to fight like survivors. Exactly, Maya confirmed. And now you have a choice. You can go back to fighting like advanced civilizations, with honor, tradition, and technological superiority. Or you can continue fighting like survivors, with creativity, adaptability, and the willingness to do whatever it takes to protect the people you care about. Commander Thex's gravelly voice carried a note of finality. The choice seems obvious. Dead civilizations cannot maintain honor. Living ones can choose to define honor differently. Subcommander Yila's bioarmor flickered with determination. The Velthari have decided. We will continue to learn from human tactical philosophy. Our ancestors may not recognize our methods, but they will be proud that their descendants survived to carry on their legacy. Similar voices arose from across the fleet as species after species committed to maintaining the unconventional military practices that had proven so effective. The transformation was complete. The galaxy's military forces had permanently adopted human-style thinking about warfare and survival. There's one more thing, Maya said as the discussions died down. The Devourers aren't gone forever. They're out there, studying us, adapting to what we've shown them. When they return, and they will return, we'll need to be ready with tactics they haven't seen before. She smiled, looking down at her boots one final time. But I'm not worried, because now the galaxy has learned the most important lesson humanity has to offer. Never let them see you coming, never fight fair when survival is at stake, and never underestimate someone just because they're wearing old boots. Admiral Kethvara's crystalline form glowed brighter than Maya had ever seen it. Captain Chen, on behalf of every species in this alliance, I want to say something that should have been said in our first meeting. What's that, Admiral? Welcome to the galactic community. We're honored to learn from the species that taught us how to survive. Maya nodded, thinking about how far they had all come since that first council meeting, where alien beings had laughed at the human representative in worn combat boots. Now those same beings looked to her for guidance on how to protect their civilizations from threats that conventional military thinking couldn't handle. As the fleet began dispersing to their home systems, carrying with them the knowledge and tactics that would reshape galactic warfare for generations to come, Maya remained on the observation deck. She watched the ships disappear into hyperspace, each one carrying part of humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy, the knowledge that sometimes the best way to win is to first look like you're losing. The girl in boots had led the charge that saved the galaxy. But more importantly, she had taught an entire galactic civilization that survival was more important than pride, creativity more valuable than tradition, and that sometimes the most powerful weapon was the willingness to fight like your life depended on it. Because it always did.